Put all your money on the table, take off your shiny new shoes. Let's make believe that it's midnight and we got nothing to lose. You'll bring a bottle of sunshine, I'll bring a bottle of rain. If we can mix them up just right, we'll catch a ride on a rainbow. Ride on a rainbow, yeah. Ride on a rainbow. Ride on the rainbow, yeah. They got red kangaroos in Australia, turquoise and old Santa Fe, princes and kings in regalia, they got no clothes in LA. I know a place on the border where you can be what you dream, dreaming is truth out of order, where you can ride on a rainbow, yes indeed. Ride on a rainbow, yeah. Ride on a rainbow, ride on a rainbow. You don't need a guru or a trip to Bombay, 'cause when you open your eyes inside your mind, you'll find you're on your way. You don't need a guru or a trip to Bombay, 'cause when you open your eyes inside your mind, you'll find you're on your way. Ride, 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 ride on a rainbow, yeah. Ride, 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 ride on a rainbow. The grand one-man band, Raul Midón, who continues to shake up musical boundaries, and this time he's doing it all the way live on B-side. I am your host, Queen GodIs. Happy to welcome you, Raul, to the show. Give it up one more time.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about this first song, Ride on a Rainbow.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration for you behind this song? What is a rainbow for you? Let us get inside your imaginative mind.
Well, you know, rainbow, of course, is a phenomenon that happens, you know, when certain kind of phenomenon when sun and clouds and water mix together. Mm-hmm. And it's always been really inspiring because it's a whole bunch of colors. Mm-hmm. you know, and I've always thought, you know, color is a strange concept for me. I've never seen it. And so there's you know, a lot of things. I was inspired by that. I was, you know, inspired by the fact that there's, you know, sort of borders that are unnecessary in music, in, you know, in people. And so, you know, I wanted to, you know, write a song and then, you know, put a little New Orleans groove to it, you know.
When was the first time you went to New Orleans?
Well, I think it might have been in high school, but I didn't really go. I just kind of went through it. But I really have always loved that kind of groove, and, you know, the feeling of kind of magic that's there, you know. So, yeah.
Speaking of magic, I usually ask, or I try to ask a lot of artists what their superpower is, but you have so many. And so let's go on the other side of magic. What do you not do well? Like, what is happening in your life when you just don't feel magical at all? What is that moment for you?
Let's see. I don't do well with authority. I don't do well with people telling me what to do. You know, as an artist, I think the thing that I value more than anything else, including money, is freedom. I value the freedom to do what I want. And of course I understand, you know, we live in a society, you know, I don't mean like, I don't want to get up when I need to get up, or I mean the freedom to do what I want, you know, when I want. I don't like people telling me what songs I can play or what songs I can't play, or, you know, when I can and can't record a record. So that's why I, you know, have my own studio and do my own thing. And
do you remember feeling that way as a child? Like, did that feeling of really wanting to cling to your personal idea of freedom by any means necessary, did that start as a young boy in New Mexico with your dad?
Absolutely. Like, well, you know, imagination is a great, so part of the way I would do it is just, you know, sort of go off into this world and imagine myself in a world where, you know, there were no limitations, you know, to what I could do. Because when you're blind, you know, you come up against the reality pretty quickly as a child that, you know, you have this limitation that, you know, you can't see. And so, you know, the sort of music and imagination was sort of my way out of that.
How old were you when you felt the sting of not only that limitation, but other people's projection of that limitation?
Oh, I mean, I think as far back as I can remember, you know, 5. I mean, I went to boarding school when I was 5. I went to a blind school, and that was really hard, you know, like to leave home and to all of a sudden be in the care of people who were basically paid to take care of you. You know, and I was there because I was blind, you know, so. Yeah,
Well, I think that that's a good segue to circle back to the conversation about Ride on a Rainbow and the idea of rainbow. There's this jargon that people say when we're talking about race and racism, oh, I don't see color. And a lot of people take offense to that because that means that they are announcing a denial of part of someone's existence. So I want to know, how does that notion sit with you? When people use the idea of not seeing color as a...
I see it a lot of times as a ruse, as a way to say, well, you know, I don't want affirmative action because, you know, I don't see color, you know. That's BS, you know. I think, you know, for me, I think it's possible to be proud of being African American, of being, you know, of Argentinian heritage, my dad, and but for me, and you know, this is right now, it's really important. You know, when I grew up, I thought of myself as an American, you know, and that I had a certain commonality with everybody that lives here of a certain thing. And I think, you know, for me, yes, it's important, and I'm absolutely proud of my you know, dual, probably more than dual, but definitely dual heritages, you know, and I put those in my music, you know, the Latin influences, the Spanish influences, the African American influence, and I think, you know, but that doesn't mean that I have to be blinded by that in terms of, you know, what people do or so. You know, I think we can be that and also be proud of being in this country and try to look at things from that standpoint and not just from identity, purely identity.
What is your message, if you could streamline a clear message to people who are negligent about, disrespectful of, or quote unquote blinded by color in this world? What is your statement to them?
I think my message is, you know, we are better if we work together as a people, as a society, as a human species. And this whole notion, and also that, listen, let's just not put under the rug the fact that, you know, certainly in this country, which is the history that I'm most familiar with, I mean, you know, for 200 and some odd years, it was much better to be a white guy, right? Much better in every way, from economics to, and now we're writing that, and some people get really uncomfortable with that. At the same time, I'm not, you know, my dad was white, you know, from Argentina, but white, and so it's not that I, you know, want to hide away from that, but I also want to say, hey, come on, man, let's incorporate all of us into this society, and in terms of art, in terms of politics, in terms of business, in terms of everything, because how many people that, you know, because of their circumstances, who had talent, who had intelligence, who had scientific abilities, went untapped because they happened to be, you know, born in the wrong place. You know, that's untapped potential.
Well, you heard it here first. We are better if we work together. So knock it off. Really, we're going to come back to this idea of experiencing the world of color and rainbow and difference from the vantage point of someone who sees differently, and talk about a lot of other things. Born and raised in New Mexico, and then suddenly he's here in Brooklyn. Give it up one more time for Raul Midón. The next song is called Suddenly.
Suddenly, I see the things I used to see so differently. I feel as if I found a new reality. Suddenly, the noise outside my window is a symphony of endless possibility right in front of me. Winter's cold, cold enough to chill you through and through, and I don't know why the people passing by, they just don't seem to care. Suddenly, I understand the meaning of eternity, and I'm reaching out my hand to touch you. Now I see. Suddenly, they just don't seem to care. Suddenly, I understand the meaning of eternity, and I'm reaching out my hand to touch you. Now I see. Suddenly, suddenly, suddenly.
First of all, that is a beautiful song.
Thank you.
And it brought me back to the moment that we had before the show started, where I asked you a mock question, which was, what is your favorite season, and does that correspond with the season that gives you the most creative juice? But what I do know, after we talked and just from knowing a bit about your background, is that your first studio album, which is called State of Mind, came out of your journey to New York, right? Is that right?
Absolutely.
And their first winter from New Mexico in New York.
Yes.
And then you got this song, which is really beautiful, and it's amazing how beautiful things can come out of something really ugly and uncomfortable.
It was hard. You know, and you know what I like to say to people, especially now that I feel more secure about it, is one, you know, the odds that I was dealing with. I came to New York in my 30s. I don't recommend that, but.
Is that too old or too young?
Too old.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this place is rough, man. But you know, but also, you know, the bias is in show business against, you know, anybody that's, you know, above 18. It's crazy.
Yeah. And a day over 18.
Yeah. So, you know, but you know, despite all of those odds, you know, I came here and, you know, kind of made a name for myself being myself. And that is amazing.
Yeah, it is, and we want to unpack that.
You know, I didn't come here and say, okay, now you got to change. You're in New York. Now you got to do this thing or that thing. No, I came here, and being myself, I made a little name for myself.
You did. You made actually a big name for yourself. There's a lot of quotes that said that you are one of the most accomplished musicians who is tragically, I want to see if I get this, not underrated, but
well, there's still
overlooked in a way.
There's still time, you know.
So, but that's changing. So, but before we go there, I want to know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how gangsta are you?
You know, my understanding of me, I mean, I am so geeky.
I pronounced it incorrectly, gangsta.
I am so ungangsta. It's, you know, I mean, I'm
really?
just being, I mean, in terms of my like, I'm a.
Let me help you out.
Okay.
To be a visual typical person, which I am,
right,
and live in Brooklyn, and to be in New York, period, that's pretty gangster, and to be able to survive that. And to be someone who does not have that same experience of sight in New York City,
yeah, no,
that's rough.
Right,
Like,
it's like, I think in some ways I had this insane confidence bordering on arrogance. It's the only way you could do this, right? It's the only way you could have the courage to say, I'm worthy of New York's notice.
Yes,
I'm worthy of the world's notice. I don't care, you know, I'm, you know, and that, yeah, that's.
Did you have that, I mean, I could be wrong about the number, so let's just throw the number
absolutely.
out. Did you have that before stepping foot on New York City soil or concrete, forgive me, or after?
Oh no, before, because, you know, when, I mean, you know, I was pretty comfortable for a while in South Florida. I was doing studio sessions and stuff, and then it started to dry out. But when I got this publishing deal, I got some money, and I was like, I want to go somewhere where I can see how good I really am. Because, you know, you can be good in a small town, and Miami's a small town.
Right.
It's big, but it's a small town.
Okay.
Like, you know, I want to go where the best are, and where not just the best, but the most unique are, and
That's
see
interesting.
where I stand, if I stand at all. Because, you know, you can come here and think you're the shit, and then
Hot-ish and realize that you're cold diarrhea.
and then realize, man, you know, there's like, and you come here, and everybody that does it, every musician comes here and goes to a show and says, holy crap. I remember I went to the Sugar Bar.
In Harlem.
In actually in the 70s, I thought. It was in like the 2004, Ashford and Simpson had this place.
Okay, that's not in Harlem?
I don't
thought
think
it was
so.
in Harlem.
It's in the 70s somewhere.
All right. Okay. I stand corrected.
So anyway, I went to this place, and Roberta Flack's at the time band was the house band there, and they had this vocal jam where like you could get up and sing your song, you know. And I was just in New York, so I was looking for any place that I could perform. And every one of these dudes sang their asses off, played their asses off, and I'm like, I've never seen anything like that.
Were you by yourself, or did you have someone?
Well, I mean, I went with somebody, but you know, and that was like one of those like moments of like, man, this is some bad.
But what happened when you got off the stage?
Well, you know, I went up there and I sang and you know, tore it up and everything. I sang What's Going On, you know, and it was like people were getting my number and stuff. And
do you find that people find you unassuming? Does that work in your favor? That like maybe when they first encounter you,
I don't know because I don't see their faces.
Right.
I think in some ways,
can you feel it though?
Being blind, some people might see me and say, "Oh shit, maybe he's really good because he's blind." I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that. I don't know how people perceive me.
Well, I asked the question about your gangsterness because not necessarily just in terms of courage as an artist performer, and I think that that's really at this point not a question, but just in terms of Brooklyn. Specifically, that's where the studio is. I want to know if you remember, what was the moment when you landed in New York and you made your way to Brooklyn, you got out of whatever vehicle you were in, plane, train, automobile, whatever, however you ended up in Brooklyn. Can you describe for us the moment when you put your feet on Brooklyn concrete? What did you smell, hear?
I have to say my first contact with Brooklyn was hardcore. So I got this gig.
That's a good word. That's a very Brooklyn word.
I got this gig with this friend of mine that I had gone to school with. And we went to this place to play. And it was like, you know, I was taking any gig I could. And it was like a kind of a food place, but really a kind of a divey bar.
Okay.
And we played, and I took home $25.
Yes, that is actually a lot for an artist.
And man, and I thought, whoa. And you know, the only reason, and I lived in Manhattan, so I had to get a ride with somebody. So one of my friends drove me there and drove me back. And I thought, whoa, this is like, is this what I've gotten myself into? Because $25 ain't gonna pay the rent, man. Not even a little bit.
Did the people so this dive bar was in Brooklyn, correct?
Was in Brooklyn.
And did they clap afterwards? Did they?
Yeah, I mean, it was, you know, it's interesting because it was there was a lot of artists there, like painters, and it was very New York, like in a almost a cliche way. Like there was a lot of people there, and it was very kind of an attentive audience, but it was just so little pay.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Brooklyn, not for the little pay, but you know, artists don't always get a lot of work. But in Brooklyn, we give you that work. We make you earn every applaud,
well, you know, I have to
every
say,
dollar.
One of the guys that gave me one of my first breaks in New York is a Brooklyn dude, Spike Lee. So I got to give him a big shout out to that,
Brooklyn's own.
because he gave me a little thing.
Right on. And we're at a studio right around the corner from the 40 Acres and the Mule.
Yeah.
So the producer wants to chime in because this, you know, we name dropped Spike Lee. We got to go a little bit deeper. So tell us a little bit quickly about that Spike Lee moment. What was the gig? Where was it? What was happening?
So check it out. So I get this call, not a call. I got I had gotten a residency at Joe's Pub, which was a really amazing thing that I didn't realize at the time. You know, when I heard the term Joe's Pub, I thought bar, you know, I didn't know it was the public theater, you know, but it was a chance for people to, like every month, people were starting to come and I was starting to build like a little following and stuff. And I was hanging out backstage and this producer came up to me. His name is Danny Capillion, maybe people know him, and said, how would you like to play Carnegie Hall? And I said, yeah, you know, someday that would be cool. He said, how about next month? I said, really? I said, yeah, man, with the orchestra and stuff? He said, no, solo. Really? So he was producing this show called The Movie Music of Spike Lee with Cassandra Wilson and Bruce Hornsby and Diane Reeves and, you know, all this, and the no-name, Raul Midón, you know. And so I did this thing, and my wife tells me that, like, I'm playing, and Spike Lee is, like, kind of coming over, like, I gotta check this out, you know. And so after the rehearsal, after we did one show, the New York Times just panned it, but they said that I stole the show in the article.
Oh, wow.
It was Khalifa Sena who wrote the article.
Shout out to them.
And so you know, my wife's, Raul, Spike Lee's on the phone. I'm like, what? Really? And so we did this. I was in there. I wrote the song for "She Hate Me," the movie, and it was a pretty interesting experience. He would call me up like late at night, you know.
Yeah.
I got this idea, man. I got this idea. Love is money, and money is love. All right, click.
Wait, so you wrote a song for very Spike-ish. But you wrote the song for the original "She's Gotta Have It"?
No. She Hate Me.
Oh, She
Not
Hate
She's
Me.
Gotta Have It.
Okay,
Oh, that was way before my time.
Yeah, okay. I was like, okay, now I need to ask you questions about your jeans. Okay, for "She Hate Me." All right, I actually did want to ask you, so we're going to come back after the next song and ask you some more questions. I'd love to know your relationship to movie, film, and media, because a lot of people just really don't know what that experience is like outside of themselves. So we're going to talk about that. Shout out to Spike Lee and 40 Acres and a Mule Productions right around the corner of the block. Give it up one more time for Raul Midón. Yeah. The next song is called Invisible Chains.
Where there's a will, there is a way. Where there's a will, there is a way. It's a crying shame to lose a game as a prisoner in a picture frame made for you and me. If only we could see the invisible chains, invisible chains. Why do we fight both day and night? It doesn't matter who's wrong or right, the end is still the same. We're breaking from the strain of these invisible chains, invisible chains. Where there's a will, there is a way. Where there's a will, there is a way. When I was a little boy, vivid dreams were my favorite toys. Sweet music set me free. I'd close my eyes to see the invisible chains, invisible chains. But now I'm grown to be a man, gonna make my way with my own two hands. Wish that I could be absolutely free from these invisible chains, invisible chains. This prison is of my own invention. What will it take to capture my attention? Love will help out the sea. Don't see that's inside of me that holds these invisible chains. Invisible chains. Where there's a will, there is a way. That's right. Where there's a will, there is a way. Where there's a will, there is a way to break these invisible chains. Where there's a will, there is a way to break these invisible chains. Where there is a will, yeah, I know, oh yeah, where there's a will, there is a way to break these invisible chains. Where there's a will, there is a way to break these invisible chains. Where there's a will, there is a way to break invisible chains.
Where there's a will, there is a way. This quote seems to really define not just your musical career, but your life, and the decisions that you made early on about how you wanted to navigate life and be known. I would like for you to finish this other quote of yours with a statement or thought that helps sum up the concept for us. When you listen to the space just beyond the line of sight, ... What happened?
I hear through what people are saying. I hear through what's being missed because of the, sometimes, not all the time, but is being missed because of the prevalence of the visual data that people get. You know, I always tell people, like, you know, my friends, like, if I'm hanging out and I'm talking to somebody, a woman or a guy, I don't want to know. I don't want them to tell me, oh, she's good looking. I don't care. I don't care. I really don't. And I don't want that. I don't want to be, you know, I want to know what they have to say. I want to get into that.
Has that always been the case, even as a young man? Like, you always
no,
felt
you know,
like you didn't care?
as a man, you always, you know, like your friend, yeah, she's hot. And this, no, she's not. This, that. You know, you get into that whole thing, and then you start realizing this is somebody else's, you know, baggage. This is not what I'm into. You know, yeah. I mean, great. I mean, if somebody, you know, is good looking, that's cool. You know, but it's not, it's, you know, so that's like an example of that, you know. For
well,
me,
now
like,
I have like a whole other list of questions just based on this.
like, you know, like,
that's not
like the whole thing with Ray Charles with like checking your wrist out.
That was one
yeah, man, you know, like I don't resonate with that at all.
Got you. You know, I want to, just for those who are watching from home, just a little backdrop. If you've been one of those people who've been under a rock and have not heard of Raul Midón. Raul has a twin brother, Marco, is that right?
Yep.
Midon.
Yep.
And they were blind since basically birth, due to an incident with an incubator, which was new technology in that particular area where they were born at the time, and so malpractice. Their eyes were not covered, so as a result of that negligence, they grew up blind from babyhood.
Yeah, I just want to say I don't necessarily consider it malpractice because it was a rural, it was the 60s. And
that's good to know.
They really were trying to save our, you know, we're premature.
Okay.
So I don't, you know, people say, oh, wow, you should sue them.
Right.
You know? No, man, you know, yeah. I don't think, they didn't do it on purpose.
Right.
They were trying to save our lives. You know, we were premature. and you know,
Did
having
your parents
trouble.
feel that way?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well, thank you for clearing that up,
Yeah.
because that actually is a big accusation, and we don't want to be incorrect in that way.
No.
But the point was that, you know, to have this experience since birth as a result of that
Yep.
incident. Let's fast forward again to, we were talking about Spike Lee, and I'm really curious to know, prior to meeting him and performing at his invitation, what was your experience of Spike Lee's movies? And from a broader perspective, what is your experience of media and film movies? Like, what is your experience? Do you sit down and listen? What technology do you have to assist you in that process? Do you enjoy it?
You know, I have sort of realized that I really now, and I think it's like the age we're living in now, like now we're spoiled. Like I used to just know that I was missing half the movie by not seeing.
Right.
And now I want descriptive services, man. Like I don't want to watch a movie where I can't know what's going on.
Do they have something like that
They
where
do.
it's not annoying?
Sometimes, and it's maybe annoying, but you know, at least, you know, like, you know, if you go to a movie theater with somebody, you know, they have to either not describe anything to you or they have to be very quiet so they don't disturb.
Right.
So like, yeah, I don't like, yeah, so movies have always been a little bit of a contention point for me in that sense.
Yeah.
Like, cause you know, it's a movie. It's not, you know, the audio is only half the picture.
Right.
Whereas a book, now that's something
Yes.
else because they have to describe everything in words.
And that is coming from the author and not some kind of third party who's adding their perspective. And
Yeah, I mean,
assumption.
and as far as Spike Lee, I've always really resonated with, and it kind of also made me realize that, like, I grew up in a bit of a bubble, like growing up in New Mexico.
Right.
I mean, other than Albuquerque, and when I grew up, there was no black people, none. I mean, it just was like, so I wasn't as aware as I would have been of certain things if I'd grown up in a place like this, you know.
Your mom was black,
Mm-hmm.
and she passed when you were young.
Yeah.
So I just want to acknowledge her.
Yeah.
And your dad, so bless her. And your dad, Argentinian, but you describe him as white. Did he
well,
talk
I mean,
to
he's
you?
white in the sense of
And
he has
the-
white skin.
Absolutely. Right. And for many people, that's literally what it is. And then there's this idea of whiteness also being a construct of a system of privileges and
Right.
ideas of
And
superiority.
to me, that there's no argument about that. I mean,
Right.
you know, how many presidents did we have? Like 45, and 44 of them.
I think I stopped counting.
We're
I don't
white,
even-
right? So I mean, come on, don't tell me. Oh, there's no white privilege. Get the hell out of here.
Right. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole. Let's stick with this one first. Spike Lee, your experience of Spike Lee's movies prior to the moment where you met him, what was that?
Well, you know, I really resonated with. I saw the movie with Bleak with the jazz trumpet player.
Is that Mo Better?
Yeah, Mo Better Blues. Oof, man, I remember, you know, and of course it was Terrence doing the thing, who I met later and you know, got to know a little bit. And I'll tell you, the scene that I didn't have to see it was when they took his trumpet and beat him in his lip with it. Holy crap. That was like, as a musician, as somebody like that uses their body as to play their instrument, that was just heavy for me.
Yeah.
Jungle Fever was another one that was, wow, you know, because like that's kind of, you know, I'm a product of you know, mixing of the races, so that was kind of a heavy one for me.
Well, I double back at Spike because Spike has been very political since the beginning, since day one, and a lot of people could not handle that, and they still can't. But a lot of people, that's what their draw is, like his courage and audacity in a powerful way to really tackle
You know, I
some
don't
of
buy
these
that
issues.
there is such thing as non-political.
Exactly. So that's the leading question, which brings us back to the song you just performed, "Invisible Chains." I want you to talk to us about that song, and then kind of segue into what your relationship to politics is as an artist, especially in a world where we have a legacy of people like Nina Simone, who says she believes it is the artist's duty to reflect the times. What's your relationship with that? And then tell us about this song, "Invisible Chains."
Well, you know, I have, recently come to the realization that I am more political than I have been in my music. You want the largest audience possible, so you tend to, and with Libertad, the song that I wrote on Don't Hesitate about immigrants, I started to come to and then with what's happened in 2016 and what's happening right now, literally as we speak, I realized that I cannot be just love songs and, la-di-da, that I am a communicator. I have a platform, small as it may be, and I'm gonna, express. So like this batch of songs that I'm writing that is not on any record yet are more political than I've ever been, and I'm sure it'll piss some people off, and too bad,
Do you feel like the very fact of your presence and showing up and the declaration that you made prior to coming to New York saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it fiercely, do you feel like you are an embodiment of a political statement?
Absolutely. I'm the embodiment of a statement of, create the infrastructure to have so that there is the most opportunity possible. Anybody that is born super rich, I don't care where you're born, you're gonna probably do okay, But to create, the opportunity for someone like me that came from a lower middle class background, rural, to create that the infrastructure to allow me to thrive, to me, that's a liberal idea. That's a liberal idea.
You also,
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I don't want to cut that thought.
Whether it's, saying, okay, we had, slavery for, this many years, so we need to do something about giving people who didn't have a chance to build family wealth, for instance, didn't have a chance to we have to compensate for that in our society. I feel pretty strongly about that.
And I think that it comes through in a lot of different ways, and also in the way that you perform, even when you actually are not talking about certain topics. You're 10 albums in, one of which you just released September 14th, is that right? And that's If You Really Want. But the album that really was pivotal for you was, and the way that people describe your work is multi-instrumentalist, singer, songwriter, jazz. I even heard somebody describe you as yacht rock, and I've never heard that before.
Really?
But yeah, and then you.
What does that mean?
I have no. I was going to ask you. So somebody please Google that for us. Yacht rock.
Is that like
okay?
On yachts? I don't.
Okay, yeah. I mean, yacht is a whole nother world for some people, so maybe they have specially curated music on yachts. I don't know. I've never been on a yacht, I don't think. Anyway, so many ways to describe you. Each album is distinctly different, but when we get to Badass and Blind, which was released in 2017, that was pivotal because that was like your head-on attack of like jazz, more jazz, and then you got Grammy nominated for Best Jazz
and I even rap
Vocal,
on it.
and you rap on that song, the title track for that song. So we have a lot in there to talk about. But with that song, you give us, you in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way, but also in, I think, in a very political way that says, okay, there is a line of political correctness where we actually don't get to the meat and bone of topics.
That's right.
You say, I'm badass and I'm blind. And so, you don't have to be afraid to talk about it. You don't have to be afraid to address it. And I think even more than that, isn't it an important conversation because it colors, is that word again?
Yes, indeed.
Your relationship with venues, with the stage, with what is accessible to you, with everything.
Everything.
And a lot of,
And, what I wanted, there was a few motivations with that. One, I had always been, I don't know, a little ambivalent about the whole thing. People would always say, they would, compare me to Stevie Wonder and Jose Feliciano. Like, that's just so low-hanging fruit, And so, I was always a little bit ambivalent about how do I deal with blindness as an artist? How do I deal with that, and in terms of how do I portray it? How do I talk about it? And so one of the motivations that really got me, I mean, just besides just doing it and sort of being successful and figuring out a way how I can be an artist, how I can tour, how I can, but I started don't hesitate, I started to produce, actually even before then, but I started to produce and engineer my own records. Yes. I got a hold of a computer with a program called Cake Talking.
Right. And that's a play. Is that a play off of the program called Cake Walk?
Cakewalk, exactly. Right. So Cake Talking is a script that's written for Cakewalk. Do
you know what year Cake Talk was?
The last year, my software is old, but it works. I think it might have been 2005, 6 maybe, that it was last updated, and then they sold it, and it's a whole other thing now.
It's such an interesting conversation for a lot of reasons, and I'm going to make sure we soak up every inch of our time with you, because it really is a privilege to have you here. I want to say that, by the way, and shout out to your sound engineer, who told us that he's seen you perform 700 times, if not more. So that is, there's no shortage of gigs here. There's an interesting thing that happens when people witness you do so many things well. You finesse it. Not to mention your brother is an engineer at NASA, and you're an engineer literally in the studio and beyond. So on one hand, the conversation is, catch yourself before you deny me or project your limitations onto me.
Right.
But then
don't tell me I can't do something.
Don't tell me I can't. Don't tell me anything, period, because I don't like following people's instructions. But then the flip side of that is, but I still need you to be mindful that I need these things in order to be functional and to have access. And a lot of times people don't even think about if something is accessible to people who have different abilities until they meet someone like you, and now your contract changes the whole infrastructure of their venue. What is that walking that fine line like?
Well, I mean, for a long time I was just too shy. So I dealt with a lot of things. I mean, a lot of things that I wish, I wish I had been more forward about what I need. I mean, right down to the fact that I wouldn't drink enough water because I didn't want to have to go to the bathroom. That kind of shit. Like, and that's really, like, for a singer, that's murder. Like, you can't do that. So, like, I've learned that, I don't have to be ashamed of being blind, that I can ask for my needs without, and still be dignified, and still, because, when you think about it, everybody's got a disability.
Yeah.
Some people's disability is more prevalent, more apparent than others. Some people have an intelligence disability.
Sure.
I
mean, everybody in here is laughing for the same reason. I'm very clear about that.
Like we got some people way up there that have.
And it's not funny.
It's not funny.
And you try to have compassion even in the midst of being completely disgusted.
Right. When somebody's dumb and, like, at least they're, like, to somewhat humble, like, you can say, okay. But when they're dumb and, like,
loud and
arrogant, and they think then it's like, okay.
Well, okay, so let's wow. All right, let me lighten it up just a little bit. I want to talk about you mentioned. I think there's this interesting thing for artists in general. I think there's a phase where all of us try not to go to the bathroom much, no matter what your situation is, and you try to be likable by people, and then you realize likability does get you far in some ways, but it only gets you but so far. And so you try to find a balance between just speaking up, declaring what you need, and some people may not like that.
Right.
What was the moment for you where you really noticed the shift? Was it before the Grammy nomination or after? Because, like, once you get Grammy nominated, you're like, I'd like 1,000 blue M&Ms separated.
It was a gradual thing. The Grammy nomination sort of, like, validated all of this, work that I had been doing, in terms of, like, taking control and saying, I'm going to make my records the way I want to make them, and I'm going to do the songs that I want to do, and I'm going to collaborate with the people I want to collaborate with, and the hell with what people say, and, well, if you want to be successful, you got to do this or that, or, and so it was validating in that sense. But you know, I mean, it started with, I don't know, but you know, one of the moments was when I went on tour with Shakira, and you know, I was by myself, and I realized, man, this is like really rough. Like everybody's kind of out for themselves. I don't have an assistant. I don't have anybody helping me pack my suitcase every day. We're going from different country to different country. I lost a bunch of stuff because I, you know, and so then I sort of started realizing, man, I need to like, you know, speak up, you know, and we hadn't had the my wife had the brilliant idea of packing like 5 of the same shirts and pants so that I wouldn't have to worry about, you know, so I had like all these different outfits, and I would try to tell the maids in the hotel, could you please hang this up with this when you wash it, and they never did it, you know.
Well, speaking of your wife, we want to give a shout out to Kat Midon, and I know she may not always get shouted out, but she is really a key part of this infrastructure. She's the wife/manager, right? And so she's a wifeager, and that's a huge job.
Without that, nothing. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have moved to, you know, moving to New York, blind by yourself, forget about it.
So shout out to Kat for holding it down and up and all around. We want to give a shout out to John J., who is a fan of yours. He says that you are an acoustic architect. No one builds a bridge better than Raul. And I thought that was so beautiful. John J. must be a poet. You are an acoustic architect. No one builds a bridge, song bridge, and maybe some other bridges, I don't know what you do in your spare time, better than Raul. And I also want to give a shout out to hip hop real quick, because that popped up in your work when nobody expected it, when you were doing the song Badass and Blind. Tell me really quickly before we go into the last song, who is your favorite MC?
Well, I have to say I grew up with Grandmaster Flash.
Way back.
So that was like and what I liked about that was that it was real. It wasn't fake gangster. It was like, when he was talking this stuff, it was for real. It was before the sort of manufactured thing happened. And, you know, when they were talking about, you know, New York, big city, your dreams, everything in New York. I always would have seen, well, you might get fooled if you come from out of town, but I'm down, I know my way around too much. Too many people, too much.
Yeah, it's like a jungle sometimes. You guys, wow. I wasn't expecting that. I'm happy that it went there. Thank you so much. Your catalog is extensive. Your website is awesome. You Google him, you find out everything that you need to know, and there's layers. Shout out to Marco, the twin. I would love to see a collaboration between the NASA engineer and the song engineer one day. And that brings us to our time. You've been a beautiful audience, and so I just want to say, in the words of today's special guest, we gotta give a lot of love before our time runs out. So here we are, saying to the ever so sublime, badass and blind, Raul Midón, thank you so much for sharing your excitement for life and love of music with us. We had a great time.
Thank you for having me.
And we wish you all great things. And if you all like great things too, we got more in store for you all for sure. You can check out this and past episodes of B-Side on our YouTube page, listen to our podcast on SoundCloud, or simply come feel the great LOVEIRL right here in the studio, where we keep it live and all the way real. I am your host, Queen GodIs, saying we love you, Brooklyn. Till next time. Hold on. I don't drive, but if I did, I'd be a race car driver. And I don't dive, but if I did, I'd be a deep sea diver. Backup plan,
I'm not your man. Just in case, doesn't win the race, won't get your buried treasure with compromise and half measures. Push on through till you get to the other side and keep the pedal to the metal. That's right. Oh, yes, keep the pedal to the metal. But keep the pedal to the metal now. Oh, yes, keep the pedal to the metal. I don't believe, but if I did, I'd be a true believer. Yes, I would. I don't deceive, but if I did, I'd be a wily dealer. Backup plan, I'm not your man. Just in case, doesn't win the race, won't get your buried treasure with compromise and half measures. Push on through till you get to the other side and keep the pedal to the metal. But keep the pedal to the metal now. Oh yeah, keep the pedal to the metal. But keep the pedal to the metal now. Some say it all comes to nothing. No sense in trying at all. But I'd rather wind up with something, yeah. So I'll get up when I fall till I've given it all. And keep the pedal to the metal. But keep the pedal to the metal. Yeah. Oh yeah. Keep the pedal to the metal. Keep the pedal to the metal now. Yeah. All right. Keep the pedal to the metal now. Keep the pedal to the metal. Yeah, yeah. Keep the pedal to the metal now. Keep the pedal to the metal. Keep the pedal in the middle. Keep the pedal to the metal, metal.